This week, instead of going for our usual walk in the beautiful countryside, I'm coming to you from my living room because it's a rainy day, but also because we're doing something a little different this week. I have some of your questions here, which I would love to do my best to answer. I'm not a psychologist, counselor, or therapist. What I am is a transformational life coach. I help you to get to know your deeper self and your true nature so that you can stop believing all the thoughts that pop up and realize that there's a better way, a more peaceful, joyful, beautiful way to go through life. My advice, though, doesn't override any professional advice and help that you've been receiving. So please do bear that in mind. A lot of wounded material surfaces as the false self undoes. Also, the ego throws up a lot of dust storm stories that are historical narratives that incur unnecessary suffering when followed. I find it hard to tell what requires nurture and attendance and what is fallacy ego story, what not to touch and what to feel, spiritual bypass or healthy detachment. The important thing is not to reject anything that comes up. So you don't need to actually figure out what's what, because simply by being in the seat of awareness, you will notice things that come up, right? There will be the thoughts that appear with the stories, and you'll notice yourself getting bothered by those. But if you're sitting in the seat of awareness and you realize that those thoughts are not who I am, they're simply thoughts that are arising in my consciousness, in my awareness, and I can entertain them, I can give them my attention, I can mull over them, I can really grab hold of them and, make an entire life story out of them, or I can simply see them for what they are and let them go. When you see them for what they are, they don't have that power over you. So then you don't need to concern yourself with what should I do with them. You just allow them to come and go. We may not always be consciously aware of what's going on in our human experience, and that's okay because it's all part of the dance of life, coming in and out of consciousness. Maybe those dust storms got a hold of you and you went off into some thinking virtual reality adventure for quite a while before sort of snapping out of it and realizing, oh, I've just been lost in thought. Okay. In that moment, when you come back to presence and awareness, those thoughts aren't a problem anymore. Those dust storms just sort of end up blowing away and dissolving. So this isn't about really making a conscious decision, oh, I'm going to ignore that, but I'm going to nurture this. It's just about being aware, being present, and holding everything in your awareness without this energy of resistance. And I don't want that. I want this, but I don't want that. This is okay. That's not okay. That's not helpful. What's helpful is being open and being able to just allow all of it to happen in the space that you are. Remember, you are the space in which all things happen. So likewise, when you have an emotion rise up that is perhaps a repressed emotion from your childhood or a long time ago, you don't have to consciously think, okay, I need to nurture this, I need to take care of this, I mustn't push it away. again, it's just if you're in that seat, that position of awareness, then you notice it in your being, you notice the tension, the discomfort, the manifestation of the resistance, trying to push the ball full of air under the water. You know, that's what we've been doing with our repressed emotions. So when that comes up, you can allow yourself to do what feels right in the moment. And it might feel right to, perhaps you're able to breathe into it and just allow yourself to feel it, which may result in tears or all kinds of emotions bubbling over, and that's okay. You may find that you're able to let it go and realize, okay, I'm not pushing you down anymore. You're free to just exist within me, and with that freedom, you may find that it just goes, that it just passes through you. Or it may take a while for that to happen. We don't know. But all you need to do really is just be present with it. Trust in your inner guidance, the wisdom within. And just notice the resistance, any resistance you may have in your being. Keep your heart open and allow what's passing through to pass through. Whether it's thoughts, whether it's emotions, just allow it all in that beautiful space of love, of compassion, of acceptance and understanding. Not that that acceptance and compassion and understanding are things that you're consciously doing, but they are what you are when you take your place in awareness, consciousness, oneness, whatever you want to call it, that space in which everything is happening. Place of total presence. You can rest here, even though all these, tumultuous emotions and things are going on. You can still rest beneath it all. There's a part of you that's aware of what's happening and is in the stillness, allowing it all to happen. I was wondering if you could talk about how to address fear of physical suffering when there are serious health issues, and how to connect to that all-pervading healing that is available to us from life itself. The fear, interestingly, can be worse than the actual physical pain. Because the fear, when you're afraid of physical suffering, you're dealing with something that isn't real. You can't get a hold of it. It's a fear, it's a mental projection, it's a thought about the future. Many thoughts about the future, right? And this feeling of dread. And the thing is, your body doesn't realize in that moment that what you're thinking about isn't actually happening. That you're thinking about a possible future moment, or maybe something that's happened. That's the thing, that fear is usually based on experience of pain, isn't it? So you know very well what that feels like and how unpleasant it is. So your body feels this and doesn't realize it's not actually happening now. So you're suffering with physical pain, even though the physical pain isn't actually happening. So being aware of this might be enough to ease up on your hold of those thoughts, those fearful thoughts. If you can have an awareness of what you're doing to yourself every time you have those fearful thoughts, then I think naturally, spontaneously, you won't hold on to them as much. You won't consciously pay attention to them as much. I want to share something interesting with you that I heard recently. I was listening to an audio by Lester Levinson, and his story is amazing. He was actually in a very bad way. I don't know the details of what it was that he had. The doctor told him basically to go home and start getting your affairs in order, because you may only have a few short months to live. And he went back and he started to ask himself some really deep questions about life and the meaning of life. And what he realized was that the moments that he was the happiest in his life was when he was loving. Not when he was receiving love, but when he was loving himself, when he was giving love, when he was allowing love to flow through him. And so he started going through all his memories and, in his own words, squaring everything with love. So anywhere where he had a negative memory, where he had a bad feeling about someone, like an old girlfriend who had left him, and there was this resentment and resistance in his being, there was, some unforgiveness there. He basically worked on that internally, just letting it go, letting it go, letting it go repeatedly, remembering and letting go. Anywhere where he could feel any tension from past events. And he did this until there was nothing left but love for that person, for that circumstance, that situation. There were many, many, many things. And basically within a period of about 3 months, he had completely healed himself. Now, disclaimer, I'm not saying that you can do that. Lester says that we can do that. He's no longer with us. But he said that all of us are perfectly capable of doing this. And the point here is, though, the point here is to recognize this, what's inside us, that is just begging to come through us and be released, be let go of, so that we can come back into balance, come back into wellness, come back into our true nature, instead of this suffering person who holds so much deep-seated suffering and pain, right? Now, that doesn't mean that we won't experience pain. We are still very much human, and we live in a world that has certain laws, like the law of gravity. If I, bang my head somewhere, that's probably going to hurt me because it's a physical law. But something interesting that Lester said concerning pain was that he was answering somebody's question, and this person was saying, how can I get rid of this pain that I have? How can I deal with it? It's this constant physical pain. Pain feels very uncomfortable and we don't want it. And everybody pretty much agrees on that, so we don't give it another thought. Pain arises in your being. I want to get rid of it. But there is another way to look at it and approach it. And what Lester did with this person who was asking him this question was he said, well, try going into the pain. Can you make it hurt more? Not physically try and make your pain hurt more by hurting yourself, but actually by just focusing on it. Can you actually, where it hurts, make it hurt more? And what the person discovered was that when he tried to do that, the pain actually eased, which I thought was fascinating, because we never try and make it hurt more, do we? This is sort of a step beyond radical acceptance, isn't it? It's kind of like, come on, bring it on, It's quite profound, I thought. Now, I haven't tried this myself, so perhaps we really need to have a new relationship with this pain and realize that when we have physical pain, it's just part of the natural laws of life. There's a reason that you're having this pain. Sometimes it can be a life-saving pain, right? And the second part of that question was, and how to connect to that all-pervading healing that is available to us from life itself. You know, I mentioned in several of my videos that all-pervading healing is ever present in this moment, in, you know, when you find yourself in this still moment of presence. Your thoughts may still be trying to pull you out of presence. That's their job. That's okay. Let them and come back. Keep coming back. Or simply tell them, look, I'm just going to be present for a little while and then I'll get back to you, I promise. I promise. Whatever it is, just hold on for a second. Just hold on for a minute. I just want to spend a little bit of time being present. In this place of presence is where we have that natural connection with Source and that healing energy. Actually, the video I did last week had a section in it about oneness with nature, which is actually the same as oneness with now, which is actually the same as oneness with God. And that's where you find that healing energy. So the simplest way is simply to go outside, to be around nature, even if it's stroking your pet or really taking some time to behold a tree or a flower, or closing your eyes and tuning in to the sound of a bird. There's so many ways that we can become present, because everything that's here and present with you now is constantly inviting you to be present with it, right? Even this painting right here, this print, this picture, right, of the beautiful Monet water lilies. It's constantly inviting me to be present with it, right? But how often do I just walk past it without paying it any attention? Judging by the way that you describe it, I believe you've already experienced this, this all-pervading healing that's available to us from life. And life is always present. Life is always here. We are one with life. So it's realizing these old habits that we have of living in our mind, living in our thoughts and our emotions, living in the psychological realm, creating psychological time. There's a video about that as well. And just coming out of that, back to now, present with what is. Hi Aliki, I was wondering if you could talk about PTSD and how to overcome it naturally without seeking medical help. I was in a car accident 3 years ago. It was minor, everyone was okay, but I'm not mentally. I'm so anxious and I tend to keep my head down or try and read when in a car, as I feel like it's going to happen again, or I will manifest it with my thoughts. Thank you for your question. Yes, PTSD. I really don't know enough about PTSD to talk about it, honestly. But I do understand something about our human experience. So first of all, let's address that you feel it's going to happen again. I think that's perfectly understandable considering what you've been through, right? And I can empathize with that. What matters here isn't the thoughts, because the thoughts will do what they do. We can't control the thoughts, and we don't want to keep pushing them away. because that is creating resistance. And when you're pushing something away, you have to exert quite a lot of energy to keep pushing that thing away. And that can be exhausting. So you not only have the unwanted thoughts, the fearful thoughts, but you also then have the resistance to those thoughts. So first of all, it's realizing what's happening and what you're doing innocently, right? Because you're simply trying to protect yourself, protect this part of you that needs protecting. Once you see this, then perhaps you can begin to change your relationship with those traumatic thoughts. So not to reject them anymore, not to want to get rid of them anymore, even though they're so unpleasant, right? But to be okay with them. Can you get to that place? Again, don't force yourself, right? If you're not there, you're not there. Be real. Don't force yourself. But if you can realize, if you can change your relationship with them so that you simply allow them to be there and you stop trying to push them away. I know that this may seem counterintuitive and difficult at first, because it's almost like saying, allowing yourself to do something that hurts. And we don't really want that, do we? But if you can see that the more you resist them, the more they bother you, right? What we resist persists. Then perhaps you can ease up on that resistance and allow them to just be, because maybe it might help if you can identify them. So, and actually say when they come up, when you're in the car, oh, those are my fearful thoughts. I'm noticing my fearful thoughts right now. I'm having some fearful thinking right now. And it's no wonder I'm having some fearful thinking because of what I experienced, right? So if you can look at it more logically in that way, rather than being in that state of fear, which is so unpleasant and sort of perpetuates itself, if you can be in a state rather of noticing and awareness, not I'm going to go in a car and I'm going to freak out, because those are the fearful thoughts, but rather to realize, I'm getting in this car now, or I'm going to be going in a car later, and look at me, I'm already having fearful thoughts about that. And say to yourself, isn't that interesting? That sentence, isn't that interesting, is very empowering, because immediately you're in the seat of awareness, observing yourself and what's going on, observing the turmoil that's rising up in your being, observing even that you're in a car and it's like you're having multiple accidents over and over again, because the mind is remembering and remembering and remembering. And again, your body doesn't realize that it's a memory or a fear, that it's a past future thought. It doesn't realize that. This brings me to the last part of your question, which I believe is a fear that many people have. I'm so anxious that I will manifest it with my thoughts. So I remember, when we all found out about the law of attraction and how empowering that was, but then also the other side of that empowerment, which was, a complete panic, right? That, oh no, I've been manifesting my whole life. And if I don't manifest the good stuff that I want, I could be manifesting the bad stuff that I don't want. And I don't even realize I'm doing it. It's just old thought patterns, right? Thinking about everything that could possibly go wrong. Now, let's come back to this place of wisdom. And take a conscious breath, or two, or three. Relax a little bit in our being and realize that the universe is not out to get us. Let's breathe a sigh of relief. It really isn't, okay? Having these traumatic thoughts come up doesn't mean that you're going to make it happen again. The fact is that you have some awareness and that you realize what's going on and that this is a reaction, a response to a traumatic experience that you had. You had the awareness to ask me this question, right? You're not completely 100% lost in your thoughts. You realize what's going on. So you're already in a better place than you could be. Secondly, realize that it's your relationship with those thoughts. You can't control the thoughts, but you can certainly have a say in how you respond to them. At the moment, you're just in reaction mode, right? The thought pops up, you react to it. And then you have another layer on top of that of trying to get rid of those traumatic thoughts. And another layer now, let's add a third onto that, of feeling bad because you realize that you may be manifesting more of that in the future. There's a lot going on here, and it's getting really messy. So let's come back to the basics. Something happened that caused a lot of stress, understandably, in your life. And now you have some thoughts coming up because of that, right? Memories of the past and projections into the future. An understandable fear that it may happen again. But you also realize that these are thoughts. You also realize that they're temporary in nature. They don't stay with you all the time. You're not in this heightened state of stress all the time. You also realize now that you're putting undue stress on your body when you entertain these thoughts for a period of time. And you also realize now that resisting these thoughts, pushing them away, not wanting them around, is also adding pressure to yourself that you don't need to add. So, can you allow these thoughts to run their course? So if we come back to this moment and realize that in this moment you're completely safe and all that's happening is these traumatic thoughts, whether they're memories or, of what happened or fears of what might happen. In this moment, if you look at the facts in this moment of where you are, what's happening and what's not happening, you'll see that you're safe. That you're completely safe. Now, appreciate when you're in the car, you don't feel safe, can you be okay with allowing what happened to come up as a virtual reality movie on the screen of your mind? Can you allow the movie to play itself out? Just allow it to play itself out. However horrific that might be, however scary that horror movie may appear. If you see it for what it is and allow it to do what it does, because trying to stop it doesn't work very well in the long term and the grand scheme of things, then you can begin to become somewhat emotionally protected, because you will realize as you're in the car that in that moment, everything is actually okay. What if you allowed the scary movie to play out? What if you just allowed it to play without trying to interfere with it? No matter how real it appears, no matter how scary it makes you feel, you see it for what it is. It's a memory or imagination or a mixture of the two. And just as when you're watching a scary movie, you can feel all the feels. You can have all the thoughts. But deep down in your deepest being, where the stillness is, where you're fully present and one with all things, one with life, one with God, there is a deep knowing. That's where wisdom is, and it keeps you emotionally protected. Deep down in that place, there's a knowing that this isn't real. What's making me fearful right now isn't happening. Is there a chance that it may happen? I suppose everything is possible in life, right? But you have this innate wisdom and well-being that won't allow you to go through life constantly in fear of all the scary things that may happen. It simply won't, because you're in touch with your true being. You're in touch with that part of you that is aware. That's why you found my channel, and that's why you're asking me this question, because you know that. You know that the movie isn't real, and you're tired of going through life as though it is. So allow yourself a period of adjustment. Allow yourself some time to get used to identifying the movie. Oh, yes, the movie's playing in my mind and it's making me feel very, very afraid right now. My heart is beating. I can feel it as I'm sitting in this car. But I know it's a movie. So perhaps I can allow myself to look up for a moment, to look out of the window for a moment, and to take a conscious breath for a moment. Coach yourself. Allow the wisdom within to coach you through this. And see what happens. If that doesn't help, you can always seek professional help. I hope there's something here that will help shift something in your being concerning this. With my long-term illness, many well-intentioned friends and spiritual practitioners have suggested healing cannot occur without releasing trauma. I have tried. I've worked with healers, and I've done that work with no impact on my health. It's been suggested that I go deeper. This is exhausting. Is it possible for you to address how endless it feels to constantly be working on ourselves and not seeing any result? Yes, you're right. It is exhausting. It's totally exhausting to be trying to constantly change what is. It's so exhausting. Believing that everything should be different, you know? And it's understandable, of course, that when you have a long-term illness or illness of any kind, that you just want it to go away. We all want to heal, don't we? We want to be in touch with that healing energy. But the way to be in touch with that healing energy is to just be okay with what is. And if we can't be okay with what is, then to be okay with not being okay, because that is also being okay with what is. Does that make sense? Jeff Foster explains this beautifully, actually. You know, being okay with what is means being okay with all of it. It doesn't mean that you have to actually accept this illness if you feel that you can't. But it does mean that you have to accept your non-acceptance of it. This is a sort of sounds quite bizarre, doesn't it? But if you think about it, it's all about the resistance in your being. Now, I'm not saying that you're going to be miraculously healed. I don't know what's going to happen. But you're very much in touch with this constant exhaustion and trying to improve things and trying to change things and digging deeper and trying this and trying that. And now you can just rest. Perhaps you can just rest from all of that now. Just rest. Just find a new place within, that place where it's okay, whatever's happening is okay, even if it feels unpleasant, even if you can't accept what's happening. Your non-acceptance is acceptable, right? Your gut-wrenching feelings are also okay because it's part of what's happening. It's part of the total acceptance of the present moment and of life as it's unfolding. And this is the wise way to go through life, because then you don't need to exhaust yourself with trying to resist everything and say, well, I don't want this, I don't want that, I definitely don't want that, I want this. You can have your preferences. It's okay to want to be healed. My goodness, who doesn't want to be healed? Of course. But realize that our conceptual desires can get in the way of that healing oneness that we can experience in this moment and that we don't have to wait for. We can have those future desires. We can have even our suffering. It's all allowed. It's all allowed in the space in which all things are happening, the space of awareness, conscious awareness, unconditional love. If you can have a moment like that, where you allow it all and you see it all as a jumble of human experience, then perhaps things will begin to change for the better, naturally. Perhaps they will, perhaps they won't. But I think regardless of what's happening with your long-term illness, being in this place of non-resistance can only work out for good, I'm sure. This is a response to one of my wisdom quotes. This bit about the ego, this bit about conflict, I understand it totally. How does one change another? I can be patient, loving, understanding, yet get back bullying and insults. Shutting down ends the conflict. Yet it's not healthy, is it? Well, you're right. Shutting down does end the conflict. It's the forced shutdown of realizing that this conversation isn't going anywhere. That person is speaking out of anger and frustration, and it's starting to get really personal and unpleasant now. So I'm just going to shut down. That can actually be healthy sometimes, because it stops the escalation of the unconsciousness. Shutting down, however, normally implies that it's something that you're forcing yourself to do that, as if, okay, that's it, I'm not engaging anymore, I've had enough. In which case you're doing it out of frustration and exasperation. There's also the shutting down of, I just can't deal with it, which is probably the same shutting down. But there's another way to disengage. And that is through, again, being in the place of awareness instead of being in it. So if you're having a conversation with someone, you're kind of on the same level. And this is bothering me, and then you start sort of to exchange words, and it becomes unpleasant. As you said, there's bullying and insults. And the more you react to bullying and insults, the more you'll get. And then you might end up in bullying and insult as well. Not saying that you might do that, but in general, that can happen in some conversations. Now, if, however, you're having a conversation and the bullying and insults are coming, and you can expand your view, so it's almost like sort of being in the scene of your life in a snow globe. And there's all the pieces of glitter flying around. Everybody's speaking what's on their mind without any filter. And then you kind of zoom out and see what's going on. Then you can disengage and you realize, okay, this person is obviously speaking unconsciously out of their anger and frustration. And I don't want to fuel that. So I'm just going to disengage and allow things to simmer down. And that can have a very different energy about it, because instead of, oh, right, well, I'm not going to carry on talking to you then, it can be a more sort of you just sort of take your hands off it and don't respond, or you respond with kindness and love in that moment, which may not diffuse everything immediately, but the more run-ins, the more interactions you have like that, and the more you begin to respond in this way, the more things will naturally start to change. And you may find that this person doesn't get so defensive anymore, or perhaps manage to sort of foresee what gets them into that state. So you kind of become more aware of your speaking and your energy leading up to these moments, so that they end up not happening or happening less frequently. Can you have a realization here that there's a feeling, I'm giving out this loving and understanding, and I'm getting back that, and it's not fair, it shouldn't be that way. Notice any thoughts you may have around that, it not being fair. Notice any thoughts that you may have, any feelings of injustice, and how, why can't that person speak to me in a loving and understanding way as well, because I deserve that. Notice these thoughts. These are all thoughts of resistance, because it shouldn't be happening the way it is. It should be happening differently. And I don't like what's happening. I want it to happen differently. And it's perfectly okay to have your preference. We all have our preferences, and we would all like to be met with love and understanding rather than bullying and insult. Absolutely. But recognize from this place of inner wisdom that wanting things to be different from what they are is resistance and somewhat futile. It just doesn't help, does it? So coming back to this place of realization that you don't have to like what's happening. You don't have to agree with it. You don't even have to put up with it if you don't want to. You can always change your circumstances. You can walk away or take steps to change it. But if you want to experience peace, then it's about allowing what's happening to happen. And even if you're not okay with it, that's okay. Notice the resistance within your being. It always comes back to this. Notice this resistance. We've been trained, we've learned over our entire lives to focus on what's happening, on what we're thinking and feeling and the events that are happening outwardly in our lives, and not on the deepest awareness that we are in our true being. So it's all about this shift in perspective. It's realizing what's happening to the character in this movie of life, and there's the true being that's aware of it all. This is where the peace is. It's through reconnecting with this true nature, the truth that you are in your being, that makes change possible outwardly, real, true, lasting transformation happen, because then you're living from a different energy, a different source, a deeper, fuller, more beautiful, loving and understanding place than what your mind tells you is happening and the stories that are woven into your life history. You see the difference? It's so empowering knowing this, so empowering. And finally, more on the separation of real self from the false sense of self. I've wrapped my head around the idea, but don't really know how to do this from a practical standpoint. I must say that pretty much all my videos are about this. So I highly recommend that you go back and watch these videos. Wrapping your head around something intellectually is very different from understanding it from the wisdom within you, which is just an intuitive knowing. So if you can realize that you're not your thoughts, right? That thoughts are something that are happening in your human experience, as are your feelings that come up, but that you, the deepest aspect of you, isn't these things. These are all things that you're aware of and that also come and go. But the real you doesn't come and go. The real you is always deeply present as the awareness of and consciousness of life. So all these other things are coming and going, right? Your thoughts are temporary. We don't have one thought continuously. Your feelings, your emotions are temporary. They're transient. It all comes and goes. You're not feeling one way all the time continuously. These are all things that are happening in your experience, just as right now I can see a cloud, but in a few moments that cloud might be gone. Actually, it won't be gone because the entire sky is full of cloud today, but You know, I can hear the rain coming down, and in a few moments, that rain might stop. So these are all things that are happening in the snow globe of our experience, right? But there's a deep awareness of these things happening. So you can't be these things. You can't be your thoughts or your feelings any more than you can be the rain out there or the flower over here. You are not these things. You are the awareness of these things. And by the same token, in that awareness, there is a oneness. So I'm going to say something here which may sound confusing, but I hope it doesn't. In reality, the true self is the oneness that encompasses all things. And therefore, even the ego and the false sense of yourself, this idea, this mind-created identity of who you are, including your life story and all the events that are happening, isn't separate from your true self, because your true self encompasses everything. Nothing is separate, just like nothing is apart from God. Nothing is separated out of this oneness, even though in experience, it is. In our experience, obviously, there is a separation. I'm here and those things are there, right? I'm me and you're you, two separate beings. This is how the oneness is manifested. It's manifested in this physical world of form. But it all comes from the formless, from the divine energy that we can call spirit or God or the universe or oneness, love, right? It comes out of that. It's created out of that. So we are one. There's non-duality, but there's also duality. There is oneness, but there's also the experience of separation. There's your true self, but there's also an ego, a false sense of self, a mind-created identity, which we kind of need some kind of ego to walk through this world, really, you know, unless you're going to be like Ramana Maharshi, who, you know, was just so enlightened. He was just in a state of bliss all the time. He couldn't even feed himself, but an ashram grew up around him and, you know, people fed him and they took care of him. That's not going to happen here in the Western world, as Eckhart Tolle points out to us. So we do need some ego to function. The important thing is, though, to see it and understand it all for what it is and not get caught up and miss out on the truth of who we are and the truth of life. Thank you so much for all your questions. I did my best to answer them, and I'd love to get your feedback if any of this was helpful, because if it was, I may be doing more Q&A videos in the future. Thank you.